Hey YouTube, this is Steve from Average Joe's Fantasy Football, and I've got another video to help you guys out with your Dynasty League. Whether you are in a rebuild or in a win now mode, these are some wide receivers that I'm looking to buy or sell based off of where I'm at in my Dynasty. So make sure you guys check out our other video as well. We did a running back one, and it seemed a lot of people had some great comments in there. A lot of good feedback on our socials. So again, make sure you check that video out as well, and we'll get right into it. All right, so I'm going to start off with the buys. These are going to be receivers that I think are going to be some great assets for your team. Even if it is a rebuild or win now, these are some wide receivers that I'm looking at to help add value and help you win those leagues or, again, in that rebuild. So the first guy I want to talk about is going to be DJ Moore. I love DJ Moore. I had him actually in my redraft league last year, help win a championship. I think he's one of those talents that no matter who is at quarterback has been very successful in that. Right now, early rankings in Dynasty has him at wide receiver 14. And I actually like that spot. I haven't dropped our official rankings yet, but that's kind of a great spot for him. What I like about him as far as a buy goes, a lot of people just don't see him as a premier wide receiver in fantasy. For whatever reason, they just don't see him that way. Maybe it's because it's Carolina and there's not a lot of exposure, or maybe it's because of the quarterback situation with Sam Darnold and there was a lot of things going back and forth last year. So that could be possibly it. But if you look at it, the last 3 years, he's averaged 1,100 yards in receiving. He gets targeted heavily, even with bad QB play. He's seeing 138 targets a year. So if he's in PPR and you're looking for a stud receiver, whether you're in rebuild or win now, he is somebody I'm absolutely going to. Now, the only downside that I have with DJ Moore is he doesn't score a super large amount of touchdowns. Typically, he's about 3 to 4 touchdowns a season, which obviously hinders his value a little bit. But the fact that he's getting crazy targets, 1,100 receiving yards, and that's even with bad QB play. Just imagine when they actually decide to get a good quarterback for Carolina, the stock is just skyrocketing for him. So I would definitely try to trade for him. You may have to give up a little bit. Again, depending on where you are in your status, you might have to give up a little bit. I would be even okay with a late first round, even this year, to get him. But again, just something to think about. Another receiver I like is Amari Ross St. Brown. St. Brown came out of nowhere for Detroit towards the end of the season, had an amazing ending to his 2021 season. Right now, he's ranked wide receiver 25 in Dynasty, which is very respectful. I mean, dude, this kid is amazing. A lot of people liked him going into the draft, but he didn't get drafted very high. And a lot of times I saw him fall into the mid-second to even in the early third round, which is a steal in most cases. The last 6 games, just so you know, in PPR, he averaged 25.1 points. 25 points the last 6 games. That was his average. He was amazing. And that, again, him and Goff had a great connection. And I know a lot of times they played behind, which I think added to his value, but I like him a lot. He was averaging 8 catches a game, and he also saw a touchdown in 5 of those last 6 games. So those are some things that I think is a little bit challenging. Okay, and then when I talked about it, because I've got 4 Dynasty leagues, so I've kind of been playing around to see if I can get them on. I didn't have them in any of my leagues. There are some teams that are just absolutely not letting him go. Some people are, a first and a second, which I thought was a little extreme. That was probably the most. So he is a little bit harder to get, but he's somebody that if you can possibly squeeze in, maybe add him into like a package, you might be able to get him. I love him. I think he's going to be a great asset for your future. And again, for a win now mode. Another receiver, I wouldn't say necessarily win now per se, but I think he's going to help build it for the future is Darius Toney. I have him in a couple of my leagues. Right now, he's ranked in Dynasty wide receiver 40. Part of it was his injury. His size kind of is a little bit of a scare for some people. And of course, the quarterback play with Daniel Jones for the New York Giants. But if you watched the Dallas Cowboys game last year, and I hate to say that, but when you watched the Dallas Cowboys game last year, he showed the flashes of the potential he can be. In that game, he was a very, very talented receiver. He made Trayvon Diggs look horrible. He made Anthony Brown look horrible. He just looked the part of what they were expecting out of him, right? Again, you could probably get Toney at a fairly good price just because of the fact that there's actually some good receivers going into the draft this year that some people are really super excited about. Or you might even be able to trade him maybe some future picks. But I like Darius Toney. He's somebody that I'm looking to get in some of my leagues. Like I said, I already have him in 2 of them. But he's definitely somebody I would get. And again, price-wise, of the receivers I'm talking about here, he's probably going to be your cheapest option if you're looking to kind of grow and add some depth at the wide receiver spot. Last guy I want to talk about as a good buy is going to be Brandon Cooks. Again, another receiver like DJ Moore. Yeah, he's a little bit older, which makes it, not as appealing, but Brandon Cooks at wide receiver 37 right now in Dynasty has been amazing even with all the crazy quarterback play. He's obviously played for, the Saints. He's played for the Patriots. He's played for, obviously, now the Houston Texans. And the Texans right now have Mills at quarterback, right? And that, obviously a little bit of scare. His age does have, a little bit of a factor in his value, but I think that's why you can get him at a pretty good price. And again, if you think about what Brandon Cooks has been able to do and add value into your fantasy team, he's somebody that for 8 seasons, of those 8 seasons, only 2 seasons he had like 500 or 600 yards in those 2 seasons. He's been getting 1,000 yards every year of those 8 seasons. And he's heavily targeted. Last year, I think he had, 120, 121 targets last year in fantasy. So he's definitely a PPR asset for sure. He's not going to have a lot of touchdowns. That's not his forte, is gaming. But he's going to get you at least 1,000 to 1,100 receiving yards. He's going to get you anywhere from 70 to 90 catches. Again, a very solid high wide receiver 2. Definitely a good flex option if you've got some great depth at wide receiver 1 and 2. But he's somebody that you can get at a good price. Again, maybe add him in some packages, and he's going to obviously shine for you. And especially if you're going to win now, might help add some value. Now, the flip side, some receivers that I'm looking to possibly trade. Now, this is if you are in a rebuild status and you're just trying to get some assets. These are 3 receivers that I'm looking to possibly trade. First guy is going to be Tyreek Hill. Right now he's ranked at wide receiver 7, and that might change a little bit, obviously, with now the change of going from a Patrick Mahomes throwing him the ball to a Tua. Look, Tua, I think, could still do well. I don't think Tyreek Hill is going to have a complete drop-off in fantasy. And I think with Waddle on the outside, you got Gesicki. Obviously, we don't know what's going to happen with Devontae Parker. They have a lot of weapons, and I think that only does help Tyreek Hill. Reason why I think Tyreek Hill is somebody I would possibly get rid of is, 1, his value is still there. I think you still definitely get it first, possibly more. Especially for someone who's trying to win now. This is always, again, targeting teams that are trying to win now. His salary cap is a big factor for me. Right now, obviously, it's not too bad. But give it 2, 3, 4 years. Where is Tyreek going to be when that salary cap really hits and they have to actually pay him those large amount of money? That also plays a factor. Tua might play a factor, and we'll see how this 2022 season plays out. Because, again, we're not really sure how this is going to play in this new offense. But I think he's somebody I would possibly get rid of just because. Now, if he shines, the person who got him probably be very thankful. Hopefully you got a good investment in return. But again, he's somebody that I'm going to trade to somebody who absolutely wants to get a win, who's maybe a wide receiver or 2 away from getting that championship this year. And you can get some good draft capital or maybe some younger players. Again, maybe use Tyreek Hill to get like Amari Ross and maybe a 2nd round or something. Something that you can get some packages to get and kind of build your team up. All right. So again, rebuild. I'd probably get rid of Tyreek Hill. Another receiver I'm possibly getting rid of is Keenan Allen. I personally am a big fan of Keenan Allen. I think he's one of my favorite receivers in the NFL. And I'm not talking fantasy. I'm just talking real life. I love his game. I love how he plays. He's probably one of the most consistent, very quiet, and he just balls out. Now, Keenan Allen right now is wide receiver 21 into this season. Again, might change a little bit. The fact that Mike Williams was re-signed and is a little bit younger does hurt Keenan Allen a little bit, but I think Keenan Allen's still obviously one of the top receivers in this league. But age is something I'm going to factor in. You do have an outstanding quarterback at Justin Herbert, which obviously helps and benefits. Again, one of those guys that if you have to rebuild and you absolutely need some draft capital and some younger players, Keenan Allen's one I could possibly get rid of because he still has that really high threshold of value. People are looking at him. They know what he can do. He provides constantly every single year in PPR. And again, Injuries play a factor. This guy is just a monster. He doesn't miss, and hopefully I don't curse him, but he just doesn't miss. He's one of those guys that you can get some good draft capital if you are absolutely in a rebuild mode. Last guy I want to talk about as a receiver I would possibly think about considering is Mike Evans. I like Mike Evans. He's very similar to that Keenan Allen play. He's very consistent, quiet, just balls out every single year. Here's where I have him. Right now, he's at wide receiver 18. Reason why I like Mike Evans as a possible trade is the fact that, look, you went from having a great career, even with you had Jameis Winston, Tom Brady, then Tom Brady retired. Okay, stock changed a little bit. Then Tom Brady's back. Now his stock's back up. But with the fact is, Tom Brady, we don't know when he's going to retire again. You just lost Bruce Arians as your head coach. Todd Bowles is more of a defensive-minded head coach than an offensive, but you still got Tom Brady. So his value is still really there. But Chris Godwin, he's a receiver that's younger, playing for a big contract still. He got franchise. He's still playing for that contract. Is that going to change much for Mike Evans? No, not really. I think Mike Evans will still do very well, but I'm thinking future, right? As a rebuild team, I'm looking, okay, I've got still a good Pro Bowl wide receiver that's going to put up 200 plus points in fantasy. What can I get in return for him? Again, this is somebody I'm looking at getting rid of to get some draft capital, or again, target some of those younger receivers. Maybe you don't need receivers. Maybe you need to get rid of Mike Evans and get a younger running back. Maybe target some of the running backs that I mentioned in my other video. So that's something I would think and consider about. Of course, if you guys have other players you guys think are some good trades, or good sells and buys, let us know in the comments down below. If you guys do have questions, again, hit us up in the comments, or you could always follow us on Twitter, Instagram, we even on Facebook. You guys can always follow us there. We're always updating things to make sure you guys are ready, whether it be redraft, rookies going on, and of course Dynasty. If you guys did enjoy the content, make sure you hit the like button. Also, make sure you hit the subscribe button if you are new, and the notification bell is on. That way you guys are going to get notified every time we drop a video just like this. That way you guys are prepared. Again, whether we're talking Dynasty, redraft, whatever it is, we want to make sure we are your fantasy guys to help you guys out with that. All right, again, hit that like button, hit the subscribe, and I'll check you guys out next time.